The majority of society have now forgot how to breathe properly. And it doesn't sound like such a big problem. Mouth breathing and not using our nose to breathe doesn't seem like such a big problem, but it has a huge impact. It has a huge impact on your health, your mental health, physical. It has a absolutely massive impact. And today we're going to talk about exactly that. From the guy, the expert on breathing, James Nestor. Today's video is sponsored by Mulliganbrothers.com, the best motivational clothing brand in the world, where you can now get the new Rise and Grind t-shirts. But before that, how do we utilize breathing? Where are we going wrong? And why is it so important that we fix this? Here are some tips and some lessons from the expert, James Nestor, on how to breathe properly and why it will lead to your success. Let's jump into the video.
What about the business side of things and those people? What's it doing for them?
So I'm lucky enough to be in San Francisco, and I live really close to UC San Francisco, which is a big research institution focused on medicine. And I was talking to Dr. Margaret Chesney, who has worked with the NIH, and she's also a professor at UCSF. And she studies breathing, and she studies dysfunctional breathing in office places. That's kind of her specialty. And she was telling me that an estimated 80% of office workers suffer from something called email apnia. What this is when you sit down, maybe it's at the beginning of the day or after lunch or whenever, you answer your emails and open up all your screens and you say, oh my God, I have 30 emails. I got to get back to all these people. They're all mad at me. How am I ever going to do this? At the same time, somebody calls you. At the same time, you get a calendar entry for something. And when all of these things happen at once, when you're in the state of stress, you can stop breathing, okay? And if you stop breathing for long enough and you continue in this manner, this can have some really deleterious effects on your health because you're not getting that constant supply of oxygen. And I asked her, I said, well, why do we stop breathing? Why don't we breathe too much? Why don't we hyperventilate? And she said, well, we do that too. But if you think about what we have learned to do through evolution, when we sense fear, right? Oh, there's an invading tribe coming into my cave. I need to be real quiet. We've adopted this skill to go, hold our breath so we're perfectly silent. And then, so we've taken this because we don't live in caves. Well, most of us don't live in caves now. We've taken these same patterns, these same dysfunctional views of fear and applied them to our office space, just as we were talking about earlier. So these dysfunctional breathing patterns, if we do this all day long, we're going to jack our cortisol, we're going to jack our adrenaline, we can jack our blood sugar. And if we do that for long enough, our bodies are just going to get worn down. And we're seeing this all over the place. So I think for office workers, if you want to be operating at peak level as well, dial in your breathing. Otherwise, you're going to be much more apt to burn out. And again, this isn't a leap of logic to get there. If you want to have energy and if you want to be present, you need to supply your body with oxygen. And if you're holding your breath or hyperventilating, your brain is not going to get the proper amount of oxygen to function properly. And so you're going to be at a disadvantage to your fellow coworkers. So again, easier said than done. What do? I use an app on my phone. You can use other little devices. So when you sit down in the morning, breathe in a paced pattern, about 5 to 6 seconds in, 5 to 6 seconds out. I keep this little sound going in the background, especially in the morning. It's this annoying little boo, so I don't have to look at anything. And then I can just lock into a proper respiratory rate right out of the gate, right when I start my workday. And it's made an incredible difference with me. I've taken my blood pressure, I've worn all kinds of devices for weeks at a time and looked at how dysfunctional my breathing was while I was working. And it was terrible. And I was wondering why at the end of the day, I was having these awful headaches and, other issues. And I was so tired. It's because I was struggling to get oxygen.
I'd love to hear just a simple breakdown that somebody could apply then for a breathing morning routine.
So just starting off the day, if you're able to just steal away for 3 minutes, for 5 minutes, if you can push it for 10 minutes, and just focus on your breathing when you wake up, it can make a very big difference to your day. I do a practice as part of something called Sudarshan Kriya, which is an inhale to 4, a hold to 4, an exhale to 6, a hold for 2. So inhale to 4, hold 4, exhale 6, hold 2. I find that that's very calming. You can do box breathing, inhale 4, hold 4, exhale 4, hold 4. You just breathe into a box. You can find all this stuff on YouTube, right? The instructions are easy, but it doesn't need to be complicated for it to work. And that's what people are developing, these very elaborate breathing techniques. And okay, that works for you, but the simple stuff can be just as effective as the most complicated stuff. It just depends on how you do it. So if you're able to do that in the morning, that's great. But it's very important when you sit down and work, you open up your monitors and you're, oh man, what am I going to do today? You're stressed. So don't let that stress take over your body and your mind. Control your breathing. You control your breathing. You control your stress. So that's the anchor here. You can try different apps for that, different apps with different timers to just have a rhythm to your breath. Same inhale, same exhale is a good way of staying balanced, alert, and relaxed at the same time. When you fix your breathing and you focus on your breathing and you adopt healthier breathing habits, it's going to fix you. It's going to help you across the board. It may not fix every single one of your problems. Of course it doesn't, but it can only help you. And that's what's interesting about breathing is there's no side effects. Sometimes when you take a drug, a pharmaceutical drug or whatever, it's like, yeah, it can help you in some ways, but there's all these other side effects. Fixing your breathing and increasing your healthy breathing only has benefits. So whether or not you're a corporate warrior or a weekend athlete or professional athlete, everybody sees gains. Everybody, even asthmatics or people with autoimmune issues. So what I tried to focus on in the book, because there's so many different breathing dysfunctions, right? And there's so many different breathing therapies, so many different exercises. There's a foundation that everybody can benefit from. And that's some of the stuff that we talked about. Breathe through your nose as often as you can. Don't worry about it if you're breathing through your mouth at some short amounts of time. Exhale fully. A lot of people pack in air. Breathe slowly, breathe less. So if you just do these things, you're going to see benefits. And if you don't believe me, mark what happens with your heart rate variability, mark what happens with your blood pressure, mark what happens with your sleep quality, and you're going to see. So we'll break this down to two. I think you want some more specifics on the business go-getters and the athletes, but just starting with the athletes, think about how athletes get most of their energy. You'd say, oh, through their food. No, we get most of our energy through our breath. And if we are not breathing in a way that is efficient, if our inhalations and exhalations aren't closely coordinated, we're never really going to be able to hit that state of peak performance because we're going to be working a little too hard to get our breath. Athletes can breathe something like 100 times an hour respiratory rate, 150 times, like an insane amount of breath that they're using, an insane amount of oxygen. You want to get that oxygen in the most efficient way. That's what performance is, right? Working at peak efficiency. And so when you train your breathing in line with your metabolic needs, your heart rate tends to go down, your blood pressure can go down. And so you're able to function at the same rate as you were before, but you have more energy because your heart rate is lower, even though you're performing at the same state. So again, this stuff isn't controversial. This is the basis of athletic performance is efficiency. but everyone's been focusing on drink this goo, eat this tablet, go to sleep at this time. But people aren't focusing on their breath, which is crazy. That's starting to change in a huge way. If you look at the work of Patrick McEwen or Brian McKenzie or Laird Hamilton, the very first thing they have their athletes do is to fix their breathing. And I've talked to these guys numerous times. They say 99% of them are breathing in a dysfunctional way. They push through the pain, right? They have the endurance to push through it. That doesn't mean they're healthy. And that doesn't mean they're reaching their peak levels. So there's a bunch of ways that athletes can do that. It starts with, guess what? Nasal breathing. And nasal breathing as often as you can. If you're a weightlifter, right, you can breathe through your mouth when you're doing that final whoosh, no problem. But when you're training, you want to learn how to be breathing through your nose. I mean, we've had the science for 4-5 decades now, and for some reason it hasn't seeped in to a lot of athletic training, but that is changing in a huge way. Because now people have wearables. They can watch what happens with their heart rates, with their heart rate variability, with their sleep quality and their recovery. And from what I've seen, it is huge. And once people adopt these healthy breathing habits, once athletes do, they will never, ever go back, to a less efficient way of getting most of their energy.
Thank you so much to James Nestor. I've tried this. One time I was out on a film project in Mexico for 2 weeks, and I would run a 10K every morning. I'm not used to the heat. It was very difficult, and I struggled with it. But I was mouth breathing the whole time. And at the time I was listening to James's audiobook, and he spoke about nose breathing and how some of the best Olympians, when they switch to nose breathing, they put in some of the best times. I switched to nose breathing. It was very, very difficult. But by the second run, and I'm on about that quickly, by the second run, I felt incredible. I felt that I could go forever. My cardiovascular felt unbelievable. And this is not an exaggeration. So I really do recommend trying out what James is talking about here. His book is linked down below with the Audible link. And today's video was sponsored by the best motivational clothing brand in the world, the Mulliganbrothers, which is at www.mulliganbrothers.com. Link in the description. Rise and Grind t-shirts are now available. The new book, the journal book, has dropped. Link down below. Guys, 100% of the profits goes back into making these possible. Thank you so much. If you want to see what I get up to on a day-to-day basis, at Jordan Mulligan Brother. Before that, go inspire some change, have a blessed and productive day, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.